It's Game Boy World, and this is a dumpster fire! Remember how I said last episode that I don't like to be hyperbolic about bad games? This is why. If I were the excitable type, I might have gone off half-cocked and started ranting about how Volley Fire was the worst thing in human history. I might have, say, accused developer Toei Animation of being some sort of gruesome combination of cancer and Hitler all at once. And then the folly of such drama would be laid bare here, a single episode later, as I stumbled headlong into The Amazing Spider-Man. Because it's here that we discover the true meaning of Cancer Hitler. Let's make no bones about this. The Amazing Spider-Man establishes a new low for Game Boy software. It's the video game equivalent of scraping the bottom of the barrel so hard you break right through the barrel's bottom and discover a second barrel beneath it. One full of tears and, I don't know, scorpions or something. The Amazing Spider-Man plays the way apathy feels. Last episode's game, Volley Fire, brought the first half of 1990 to a close. The Amazing Spider-Man, released early in July 1990, kicks off the second half of the year. We should try to see the positive in that. For instance, it's hard to imagine that the back half of the year has anywhere to go but up. Weirdly, with Amazing Spider-Man, the second half of 1990 begins as the first half did, with a not-so-great platformer developed by Rare. This is our second Western-developed game for Game Boy, and like the first, it's not very fun, only more so. Wizards and Warriors X was pretty mediocre, but it had its moments and at least looked nice. Amazing Spider-Man has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. None. No, wait. It has a great title screen. The game begins with a chiptune rendition of the old Spider-Man cartoon theme song, and a portrait of Spider-Man that ripples into place with an even fancier raster effect than the one Sunsoft used in Batman. Say what you will about comic licenses on Game Boy, but they really brought out the fancy visual effects. And that's it for the good stuff. Everything else about Spider-Man falls squarely between bad and absolutely unspeakably god-awfully wretched. The game consists of 8 stages, 6 of which play out as side-scrolling levels, and 2 of which take the form of wall-climbing sequences in which you scroll vertically. What both of these formats have in common is an unflagging hatred of human happiness. In the side-scrolling bits, Spider-Man walks, or rather, hobbles, forward. He can punch, or duck and kick. He can jump. And if you hold down the attack button, Spidey will fire a glob of webbing, those blasts being limited by your finite reserve of web fluid. If you jump while walking, Spidey will jump extra high, kind of like Mario getting a little extra distance from a running lead-up to a jump. Wait, oh god, I just compared this game to Super Mario Bros. I'm so sorry, everyone. Amazing Spider-Man serves as an example of a strange phenomenon from the 80s and early 90s that I like to call the two Rares. As a developer, Rare's Nintendo platform work operated in 2 modes, brilliant or garbage, with very little falling between those 2 poles. As with Tosei, we can almost certainly attribute Rare's volatility to the publishers for whom they worked. For a higher class publisher like TradeWest or Nintendo, Rare worked at the top of their craft, creating games that may have been unreasonably difficult in that uniquely European way, but which nevertheless just burst with inventive ideas and unmatched technical polish. For trash publishers, however, Rare produced trash games. And Amazing Spider-Man publisher LJN was the unwanted garbage barge of NES-era publishers. It absolutely shows through in the quality of this game, which is to say, it has no quality. Everything past the title screen is just terrible. This game has a sort of loopy story in which a succession of villains call up Spider-Man on his mobile phone to challenge him to beat them up in order to rescue Mary Jane Watson. I don't know how poor, desperate, perpetually impoverished Peter Parker was able to afford what appears to be an incredibly expensive Dynatac cell phone, the sort of technology that was exclusive to coked-up billionaire corporate executives in the 80s, but he whips the bread loaf-sized thing out of his spandex Spidey suit between every stage to banter with the bad guys. I'm not familiar with Spider-Man canon here in that weird period right before Todd McFarlane appeared on the scene and revamped the franchise, but I do find it surprising that his rogues gallery seems to know his identity like it ain't no thing. Anyway, you basically fight the Sinister Six, one clumsy battle at a time. That's assuming you can make it to the bosses at all. Spider-Man moves more like the Amazing Arthritis Man, jumping and attacking awkwardly and crumpling like paper as he's attacked by random thugs, bats, and horse chestnuts? Sometimes he'll manage a swing if you do a high enough jump, though I could never figure out the precise mechanism by which he'd engage swinging. It never happens when I want it to, and in any case it doesn't have any real value. It really appears to have been included simply because Rare said, "Alright, Spider-Man, he swings, huh? We should add that." Spidey attacks clumsily, and bad guys attack in endless waves, which makes for a truly joyous combination. You'll frequently come across spots where it's literally impossible to advance without taking damage, though the controls and collision detection are so poor that even simple scrums can immediately turn deadly. You can acquire power-ups from bad guys, though most of these have little value, except the web shooter refills. For some inexplicable reason, some bad guys carry cartridges that can refill Parker's proprietary spider silk fluid. Spider-Man's only hope of recovering health is to grab apple pies that are cooling on random windowsills or on subway platforms. Sure, why not? Most of the game takes the form of a very bad horizontal side-scroller, except the 2 wall climbing stages, which are more like a terrible variant of Crazy Climber. Dudes randomly pop out of windows to hit Spider-Man with a club, all while you dodge boulders falling from the rooftop. It's kind of like the celebrity cameo wall climbing scenes from the Batman TV series, except not fun. You're completely helpless in these levels, with the only boon coming in the form of your spider sense, which goes off if you're directly beneath a falling boulder, so you know to juke to the side. It's nice. Unfortunately, past the halfway mark, boulders fall constantly, and you frequently become pinned by multiple consecutive rocks that fall side by side and make it impossible to avoid taking damage. That's not so nice. Eventually, you'll come to the boss battles, which are about as fun as the rest of the game. Woe betide you if you use up all your web fluid before facing off against the Goblin. The Amazing Spider-Man is a terrible game, and it's preposterously difficult thanks to the utterly shoddy design and programming on display. I could see some poor kid buying this game after saving up for months and beating it through sheer, desperate, tearful determination, but I'm beyond that point of my life and have zero interest in subjecting myself to another second of this mess. You'll have to live without seeing the ending captured via high-definition RGB. Sorry. Developer Rare was, of course, capable of truly great things on dinky 8-bit hardware, and even Wizards and Warriors X had its moments. The Amazing Spider-Man, however, is the cash-the-paycheck version of Rare. The aspect of the company that involved taking contracts from publishers and turning out software that was barely stable enough to pass the Nintendo seal of quality crash test, and little more. No doubt the profits Rare earned from games like The Amazing Spider-Man allowed them to invest tons of effort into passion projects like Battletoads, but at what human cost? How many millions of youthful tears served as the foundation to that mighty work? Anyway, this game, as you can see, is truly abysmal. I lied earlier though. I said Game Boy software could only go up from here, but that's not true at all. As we see more Western developers enter the Game Boy market, we're going to experience some acts of monumental incompetence that will have us all pining for the relative excellence of Amazing Spider-Man. Please look forward to it. And with this, the first part of Game Boy World 1990 comes to an end. Please look for a book compiling essays, screen captures, and photography of 1990s games so far, which should be up for sale by June at the latest. After Volleyfire and Spider-Man, though, I need a break from Game Boy for a while, so keep your eye on this channel for the remainder of Good Intentions 1985, and maybe a bit of Link's retro coverage as well. As for Game Boy World, it will return in a few months with episode 66, Shin-Sen-Sho Matchmania. You've never heard of that game, but I promise it's infinitely better than Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks for watching.